the Georgia Tech Alumni Association and our Career Services Department, I would like to welcome you to today's Professional Gold webinar program on a very important subject, work-life balance. For many of you who have joined us for other programs that Adrienne Johnston has led, you are familiar with our leader. For those of you who may be joining us for the first time, I'd like to introduce you to Adrienne, a tech chemistry alumna. Adrienne's passion for forming teams and building careers began here at Georgia Tech when she was part of the founding management team at Starbucks at Technology Square. She honed these interests at VendorMate, rising through the ranks to become Vice President of Operations. After leaving VendorMate, she led user experience for KidsLink, and she is now the Vice President of Operations for Buckhead Investment Partners. So without any further delay, I'm going to pass the mic on to Adrienne. Before I do that, just if you would make sure you're muted for the course of this conversation, that will help tremendously with any background noise. Also, we would like for this to be interactive. In order to facilitate that, please just use the chat window and send a text chat to Adrienne. It'll actually be under Caroline Player, so just look for that and send us questions or comments during the conversation or at the end. We look forward to having you participate in these and future programs.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm Adrienne Johnston. Today we're going to be talking about work-life balance as part of our Professional Gold series. And the goal of our program is to help you optimize your career, and work-life balance plays a significant portion in that. So today what we'll be covering is really truly defining what is work-life balance. Why is it so important to your career? It would actually seem counterintuitive. What you'd really want is for your balance to be more on the work side in order to facilitate career optimization. But the reality is that there is a personal balance as well in order to facilitate your well-being, your happiness, and your engagement levels. So we're going to talk through all of that. And then we're going to identify how you really start to attempt to create work-life balance, or at least understand different ways of looking at it, and how it may ebb and flow throughout your career, and what's appropriate at a particular point in time based on your objectives. And then in the last 20 minutes or so, we will go through the process of action planning. We know that significantly improves the likelihood that you take some action coming out of the session and benefit from it. So for those of you who may have to leave a little bit early, the content today should probably only take about a half hour or so. And then we will spend the rest of the time on Q&A and discussion. And then if you do have to drop off even before that, this session will be available on the Professional Gold page off of gtalumni.org, so you can go back and listen to the recording. So what is work-life balance? Conceptually, the way we think of work-life balance is you have your work life. You've got your work, your career, your business, performance, responsibility, your income source, versus your life, your well-being, your family, your friends, your happiness. And we conceptually talk about having this balance between the two. And what I want to talk to you guys about today is there really ever a balance? And I think, depending on where you're at in your career and your personal life, that balance is going to change, and what's appropriate is going to change. If you are working full-time and going to grad school, you're probably going to end up finding your balance drifting a little bit more towards the work side, a little less towards the life side. And in making those decisions, if you have a family at home, making sure that you and your spouse are working through the implications of those career and work decisions on your personal life, and going into it with eyes wide open around how much time, effort, and energy that takes. On the flip side, I've had some colleagues, unfortunately, in the last year who have lost parents. So they had sick parents and then lost them. And that takes a significant pull, and it's really important for your well-being that you allow your life to drift back to the heaviest side there of your work-life balance. And you take the time to grieve, to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, that you're there for your friends, family, and ultimately healing. And so we really have to look at work-life balance, in my mind, as a constant state of flux based on where you are, and really getting comfortable with, at this point in my life is drifting more towards work, and at this point in my life it's drifting more towards personal. And how do you make all of those things work for you? How do you communicate it effectively to others around you? But there Also, I like to just look at it as my life. I am a whole person, and it's not very easy for me to decouple those two things, to say that my work is an element and my life is another. There are days, like last night, I was at work till 10 because there were some things that had to happen work-wise. But what I know is that today, when I wanted to come over here and talk to you all and come meet with Caroline at the Alumni Association, that I could sneak out for a couple of hours and no one was going to think twice about it. And I didn't have to feel guilty about it, and it wasn't costing me anything professionally. So it's really important that we figure out how to balance those two things. So today, what we are going to cover is how we go about doing that. But first, I want to talk to you about why it's so important for your career that we figure out this myth of work-life balance and how to make it work for you. First of all, what we know is that well-being contributes up to 25% of employee performance. And Kansas State did a study on this back in 2009 indicating that your well-being, your overall happiness, your satisfaction, your physical health all contributed significantly to your employee, to an employee's performance. And that's not really shocking when you think about it. If you think about it, if you are happy and fulfilled in your life, you've got high energy levels, you're in good physical condition, you're eating well, you're getting enough sleep, you're going to have higher energy levels. You're going to be excited about going to work, or certainly not dreading it. You're not going to have to call in sick to work because you're sick or under the weather or just generally depressed. You're going to be really energized, and you're going to take that fuel, and you're going to be really effective at work. And then do you know what happens? You come home and you're more satisfied as well. You're not spinning your wheels at work. You don't hate your job. So I think it's really important, that we think about how these two things are fueling each other. And there is a really cool grid. I forget who was it did it. They thought of life as a wheel, and so they said if your tire was flat in any area, you're going to end up with a flat tire. So that was your physical and spiritual well-being, growth and development. And they kind of put all these things together, and it's true. You are a person, and to act as if these two things are completely disjointed isn't the case. They are fueling each other and completely interdependent. So when it comes to creating work-life balance, what you have to figure out is what are you trying to achieve in each area of your life? And again, this is going to be in flux over time. So professionally, you may be looking to achieve higher levels of income. So are you where you want to be at a particular point in time? And I remember saying very early on that I knew that life would change with getting married and having kids at some point. And so I was really comfortable very early on in my career, working long hours and definitely letting my life drift more towards work, because what I was doing was kind of building a good solid base for my career, which obviously impacts income and financial flexibility over time. And those things matter. So when you're thinking about, what are your objectives professionally, you may have income, you may have a certain level of responsibility that you aspire to. And in order to be able to take on that level of responsibility, again, you may need to get increased skills, you may need to have more practice or experience, and how are you getting all of those things? You may, again, it may be grad school, it may be an after-hours course, it may be participating in a session like this. How are you gaining the skills and the continued knowledge and motivation to continue to aspire to those goals and to achieve them, so that you can continue to thrive in your career and professionally. And again, it may be about specific knowledge. And so that, again, may require additional education. It may you may carve out an hour of your day every week, or excuse me, an hour of your day to go through and read the news and catch up on industry publications and all of that. How are you getting all of that? And how are you carving out the time to do that? You may be able to sneak into work at 8 o'clock and get it out of the way before 9 o'clock when everybody else gets into work. You may stay a little bit late. You may listen to podcasts on your drive into work. How are you going to make that work for you? And how are you going to achieve that balance? My boss and I laugh because when all day long we're in meetings and we're kind of flying in two different circles. And we talk Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings at 8:15 for 45 minutes on the way in, and that's when we get the majority of our planning and information in for the week. And that happens to work for both of us because otherwise it's, in our minds, unused time, commute time. So it's less stressful to be stuck in traffic because we have things that we're working on. So figuring out that work-life balance, I know other individuals who would not be okay with having a conversation with their boss on their drive-in. That's their time. They're listening to podcasts or music or talking to their friends, whatever that is for you. But that's how we found a way to make that work for us. Now, on the life side, what you want to understand is, you may have different family demands at particular points in time. A colleague of mine just had a baby and has been going through, the standard lack of sleep and all that you would expect with having a brand new addition. And they say, there are big life changes: having a baby, getting married, moving, getting a new job, death of a loved one. And these are all the types of things that you have to be kind of thoughtful about, and they're going to pull more towards the life side of your balance. It's going to necessitate from you more personally, which may mean that you have to give up a little bit and be more thoughtful on the work side, as he has had to do. And so he's missed a couple of events and things like that, which were, by the way, perfectly justified. So it's not a slant in any way intended to be negative towards him at all. He should 100% be with his family. But he knows that and communicates it, and we've adjusted schedules and things around him as best we can. Similarly, your friends. I remember at one point early in my career, I was traveling 3 weeks out of the year, 4 days a week. This was a consultative type of role, and I felt like I was always gone, and I started to feel like I was missing people's birthday parties and things that were going on during the week. And I remember starting to feel that work had taken over a little too much, and I knew when it started to become uncomfortable that I felt like I was missing out on opportunities. So it's really important to be thoughtful about as well. And again, your spiritual and physical well-being. I have a colleague of mine that loves to go to hot yoga, and she leaves once a week at 4:30 to go and fit that in, and it's just when she can work in, and she goes on the weekends as well. And she makes sure that she's doing that for her spiritual and physical well-being. And she does her meditation every morning before she comes in, and so she gets up a little earlier to make sure that she can fit that in. And she's able to find ways to incorporate that into work. So if she needs to leave a little bit early, she does, in order to make sure she's taking care of herself. And when she is at work, 120, 140% of what a normal person can produce. And so it's really important to her, and she knows how to manage her own energy and balance, such that she's able to fit that in, so that she can produce, again, at very, very high levels when she's in the office. This is the hardest one for all of us when it comes to figuring out how to achieve work-life balance, is we have to eliminate the unimportant. And it's so easy. We were just discussing it this morning in the office. So easy to get caught up in the reactive and not being thoughtful about the things we do. And you come in and you start responding to emails, and suddenly you spend 2 hours doing that instead of some of the more important initiatives that you have. But I will encourage all of you is to try to be more thoughtful about the things you're doing that you shouldn't be doing, either because someone else should be doing them or because you just don't have the time. And so really get comfortable with saying no, and it's not easy at all. I am right there with you if you're thinking, yeah, that's easier said than done, Adrienne. I agree. But there is this phrase that I like to use, and it's, I really wish I could help you, but I just don't have the time right now. As opposed to saying, yes, I'll do it, and not being realistic about what you can accomplish, and then being frazzled or losing out on sleep, and then, again, that impacts your well-being and your ability to really be effective in your job. It's really important that we get comfortable with a phrase, and this one works for me because it says, I actually don't have the time right now. And in my mind, that really, it doesn't say it's not that I don't want to help you. And I guess the reality is we all have time for the things we want to have time for. But I have friends and colleagues who will do, the kids' soccer coaching and all these things, and then they're struggling with work, and they go through those seasons, and to them that's really important. And they said, I'm going to figure out how to do that in order to make it work. I've decided I'm not going to be teaching ballet anytime soon, and that's really in the interest of all young children. But what you want to make sure is that you have some way to say, no, I'm not comfortable. I don't have the time. I don't have the energy. This really isn't in my wheelhouse. So really try to find a way to be thoughtful about the things that you don't need to be doing, and then finding a way to communicate that, some go-to phrase that quickly and effectively enables you to get out of having to take on yet something else that's going to keep you from being able to give what you need to give to your career and what you need to give to your personal life and your personal well-being. Third, I think it's really important to think about the kind of work-life balance that you want to have. And I kind of look at it on a spectrum of you can have a really integrated work and personal life. And so you may be making dinner and talking on the phone. You may be, again, like I mentioned, my boss and I are talking on the drive in the morning. I try to fit things in when I can and around my schedule, and I really like that flexibility, especially with as connected as we are today. I always have email, I always have my phone, and so I don't feel like I have to be tethered to my desk or that there are established work hours. And I can be productive at times that I want to be productive. So if I want to leave a little early one day to go to ballet practice or something along those lines, then I feel like I can do that because I can go home at night, I have my laptop, and I can pull it out, and I can get done when I need to get done. Versus I know plenty of people who think of work-life balance in a more separated way. So they're in the office at 7:30, and they are out at exactly 5 o'clock, and they sometimes take their lunch, sometimes don't. And when they are in the office, they are 100%. And if they leave a couple of hours early, you better believe you're going to get a request for their 2 hours of vacation time. And everybody operates in different ways, and there are different factors that contribute not only to your personal preference, but also what's expected of you in your particular situation. So depending on what kind of role you're in, there are going to be certain industry needs. For instance, some of our team members, because of the way the trading day works, can come in early, get their job done, and at 4:30, 5 o'clock, they can absolutely be done because their whole job around when the markets are open. But for other people, my role does not depend around when the markets are open. So even within our industry, our roles are so different that they actually necessitate that I be available outside of those hours in order to continue to facilitate progress and moving things forward, because my role isn't dependent upon those markets. So there are definitely things that can impact that. If you're in a client service role, you're starting your own business, your life is probably going to have to be more integrated than separated. Versus if you're in larger companies, you'll find that there are more opportunities for separation as a function of really specific and focused role types. And so they're very clear set expectations. You're probably very well staffed, and you have all the resources that you need to prevent you from having to kind of spill into some of that personal time. Again, your employer is going to have certain expectations. Our company is generally of the mindset, you work hard and you play hard. And so in terms of keeping up with vacation and things like that, we're mostly flexible. But our culture has dictated that as well. And I'm sure over time we will have to get more strict on that. But theoretically and ideally, what we would be able to do in our organization is say, let's get the job done. And I think most organizations want to get to that. And as they grow, they're able to really establish, again, those really specific functional roles that enable them to create KPIs and business indicators that say, here's the success that's being met. And we're certainly seeing some shifts in many, many workforces and cultures going more towards the performance-based models. But it is definitely important that you understand not just what the company's culture is, but what your boss's expectation is. If your boss's expectation is of the mindset that you're going to be in your chair by 8:01 and in your chair until 5 o'clock, then you need to make sure that you're best presenting yourself to meet those expectations. And so you're really effectively communicating when you're not going to be there at that certain time, so they know what to expect. And expectations and that communication is going to be a huge piece of making sure that all of this works for you. But again, there may not be flexibility based on your employer or your boss on that. I had a colleague who at one point was working on a team where his boss was very, very, very rigid is the term I would use in terms of work hours and exactly when each team member was in the office and what they did, how long you've been out at lunch for 1 hour and 5 minutes. And that was very taxing on their team. And so they, continued to talk through their boss about that. But since that person has left and kind of is in a different role, and there's a new person in that role who is exactly the same way. He's there right at 8, and he's there till 6:30, and he takes exactly his 45-minute break. And so they, as a team, are really gelling in that regard. And so it's important as we think about where we want to be that we make sure we're in the right team and we're always being thoughtful about that as we're interviewing for roles and understanding the expectations of our employers. I think it's also really important to understand their generational impacts here. My mother-in-law, my husband and I always laugh, she's always, every time we go home, which we'll be going home for Thanksgiving, she'll say, your generation and your need for flexibility. And we laugh because we're so connected and we're working all the time, and even when we're at their house, we're able to get some work done or respond to emails and generally just be engaged. And we do, love our flexibility. But her perspective is that if you're not, again, in your chair from 7 to exactly 5 p.m., that means that you're not working. And so just being mindful that in your workplace around, what's expected of your employer and the culture, and understanding that not everybody believes or will have the preference that you may have. So if you, and we actually struggle with this in many of the roles I've been in, and with different teammates who prefer the separation kind of model of work-life balance, is that for those of us who like a really integrated approach, it's 7 o'clock. If I want to call you, I want you to answer the phone. And that doesn't work for everybody. And so we have to be really respectful of each other's wants and needs. It's what's going to work for their life, and not assume that because if someone isn't working when I am working, that they're not working at all. And that falls on both sides. If you're in a highly, kind of separated mindset of I'm here from exactly 7:30 to 5, and the way that, I'm sure my colleagues will go, Adrienne doesn't stroll in until 9 o'clock every morning. No, I don't. And I'm the last one to leave our office every night. And so really trying to be mindful of there is a spectrum, and we're all going to fall in different places, and communicating our needs and expectations and what works for our families is going to be really important, not just for ourselves, but for all of our colleagues as well, in setting proper expectations. I think it's really important that as we go through the process of identifying risks to balance, that we identify times when we are going to be pulled in one direction or the other, and that we go into that with eyes wide open. If you're taking on a new job, the first couple of weeks are going to be pretty grand. You'll probably leave right on time. You don't have a lot of responsibility, but as your workload continues to pile up, you'll find that you don't know the internal processes. You don't know how to be most effective with the teams that you're working on. You're going to have to leverage all of those skills. But what it will take is more time, because you will not yet be as efficient as you were and have probably reached in your previous role. And so you're going to have to know that there's a likelihood that when you take on a new job, you're going to have to, your work-life balance is going to shift a little bit more to work. It's going to be a little bit more stressful. And you're going to have to figure out how to manage that and make sure that with your partner or spouse, friends, family, your support network, you're really clear about what those expectations are going to be going into it so that you're all on the same page. If you have a team member who leaves, that can also create a huge amount of work that you may then have to absorb in order to make sure the organization continues to move forward. And during these times, you're going to hit roadblocks. It's always a challenge. We don't appreciate the things our colleagues do until they're gone, and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that they just always took care of that. And so it's really important that you kind of go into a situation like a colleague leaving with saying, okay, where are our risks? What do we not know is going to be a problem? And you're thinking that way, and you're just going in well-rested and prepared for the fact that there are going to be some challenges ahead. But this is also another one of those great opportunities to really assess why we do some of the things that we do. Are they appropriate? Do we have better systems and measures and tools that we can implement in order to reduce that workload? So it can also be a great opportunity, and just to say, no, there's not time for that, and to really, truly prioritize what you're working on. If there are big industry changes, that can certainly have a ripple impact on your organization as it pertains to not just your strategic planning, but the actual implementation of solutions, tools. It can have a client impact. So it's really important that we be sensitive to the way our lives may shift a little bit more towards the work side of our balance. And whenever you have vacation, I always laugh. I say, I get to work even harder before vacation, and then even harder when I get back from vacation. So I'm not really sure how rested I get, but it is nice to have a break. I do find it gives me a little bit of time to reflect and think about more of the proactive things as opposed to being reactive on a day-to-day basis. So that can have a huge impact as well. But I always go into vacation knowing that there's going to be some additional workload that prior to and after that vacation I'm going to have to get caught up. It's just the reality of it. On the life side, if you're sick, a friend or family member is sick, you have to make sure that you're communicating what it is that you need from your team and your colleague in order, you may be taking someone. We have someone in my office who's really her best friend has fell and hurt her back, and so she's been leaving every Friday afternoon early to pick her up and take her to her doctor's appointment because she can't drive right now. And so really just communicating that and being really thoughtful about how you continue to get your work done so that you can best be prepared to, again, kind of pull a little bit more towards the life side of this particular work-life balance equation, and making sure that you're not inundating yourself or overwhelming yourself, particularly in the case of serious illnesses. Kids go through cycles. Summers, I find, for parents tend to be really difficult in terms of summer camps and coming up with babysitters and different plans, because school in its own right at least has some predictability and a schedule that kind of comes along with it. But there are going to be times towards the end of the year, the holidays are going to be recitals and graduations and all those kinds of things that are going to pull you a little bit more out. And so that's on a kind of a micro level. But at a macro level, kids completely change your sense of balance and having to kind of make sure that you're there and available for them on an ongoing basis. So as you're going into that, again, like one of our colleagues, you can make sure that you're planning and communicating in advance. Ooh. It looks like our webinar may be having some problems. Can everybody still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay, we just came back. And then if you're moving, I was shocked the last time we moved because before that we didn't have a child. We had a much smaller home. But this last time we moved, it was a whole day affair, and I feel like sometimes we're still moving into this house and trying to get it organized because there's so much room and so many things. And so knowing that, it's not home anymore, and there are going to be a few months there where it does take that change, takes energy from you, because you always kind of feel like you're staying in a hotel at first, and you want to make sure that you're being thoughtful about what you're going to be able to give. And so what you're not going to want to do is go and decide that you should move with visibility to big industry changes or a colleague's departure. You're going to want to try not to put these things back to back so you're not being pulled on both sides. That being said, life is life, and we can't always predict these things or know what's going to happen. But at least having visibility to you're going to be pulled in both directions gives you the ability to start saying no to the less important things. So this is my favorite part, as you all know, which is we know that by actually saying, I'm going to go do this, if you do it within the next 3 weeks, you're more likely to actually have some demonstrable evidence and improvement in aspiring to your work-life balance. And so what I want to ask you guys to do is if you will expand your chat window by pointing on the downward-facing arrow, and then within that there may be another little sub-chat feature. And you can either send your message to everyone or just to Caroline, and we'll read those out anonymously. But I'd love for you guys to share with what's one action item that you each want to take to improve your work-life balance. One thing that you can leave here today and say, I'm going to go work on that, whether it's saying no to more things, better prioritizing. I was actually thinking to myself today, in light of my late night last night, after I left here, instead of rushing back to the office, I might run over to the gym, which is quite the feat to work that one in. But it might be really good for my well-being and energy levels to have a little bit of a break. So think about what those things are for you, and we'd love for you guys to share them if you'd write them in your chat window. I'll give everybody just a second to provide a little bit of feedback. At this point in time, too, if anybody wants to ask any questions on challenges they face, maybe with how to implement work-life balance in your life, we'd love to hear those as well. Anybody? Going once? Going twice? Okay, well, I'm going to tell you guys, I think I'm going to go to the gym after this. Now I've committed to all of you that I'm going to go to the gym and work on that well-being piece. So I think that's going to be really important. Another element that I want to make sure that I am focused on is doing a better job of saying no and not trying to take on everything. If I go back through my list of the things I was working on last night, half of them were things I probably should have been training other people to help with. But that obviously requires a whole set of effort as well. Someone else says, I just started a work from home job plan to include exercise during the week at least 3 to 4 times a week. Good for you. My goal is always somewhere 3 to 5. I said I'm not going to be hard on myself if I at least get to 3, and 5 is a really stellar week. And we have this great gym down in our office that makes it super convenient, but I think that's almost part of the problem is it's so convenient the gym bag just sits there and I'll go tomorrow. I'll just keep working on this thing right now. So anything you can do like that to make sure that you're fitting in time in order to take care of yourself, in order, again, to facilitate a more productive time. It'll increase your energy, your productivity, your clarity around the things that you're working on by actually getting away, as counterproductive as that, or counterintuitive as that may seem at times. Thank you all very much. If you have any questions, someone else just says they purchased gym equipment and plan to exercise during their lunch break. I love it. And so you don't have the challenge that I always have, which is with going down to the gym, I find I get a little sweaty, and then I come back and I'm like, it's a whole shower and it's a whole production, and now my hair looks bad for the rest of the day. That's my excuse anyway. So then I was going at 4, trying to get out, still be out of the office when it was still kind of busy, and then I could come back at 5 when everybody else had left and be super productive. Someone else says, in the job market, employers seem to limit face-to-face interview time. In my opinion, employers do not spend the effort they once gave to understand potential employees. Trend seems to dismiss work-life balance. Thoughts? I think it's going to depend on the culture, who you're interviewing with, what the size of the companies are. Culturally, I mean, we all talk about this, right? Every other country in the world has their siestas. They have paid maternity leave. And here in the U.S., we tend to be, very focused on how much you can do, how many hours you can work. And it's almost a point of pride in some circles. And so I think it may be important that, again, we're just all communicating what it is we want and need, and we're making sure that we're setting ourselves up with employers and prospective employers who are going to meet our needs, and that we ask those questions. I think it's important, I will note, not to get your work-life balance questions out there right at the beginning, because I think that it can be an immediate trigger to someone that you're interested in limiting how much you work or your productivity. But I would certainly start to address it as you started to get further down the path and you're meeting with an actual, with an interviewer who is going to be your boss, and what is their perspective? Do they expect that you're going to be in your chair or not? My boss does not expect that I'm working from 7:30 to 5. If she's going to call,
Hello, I think we lost sound.
we just unplugged the microphone and picked it back up. Perfect. So I was just saying, someone said that they wanted to be off their phone for an hour at home. And I think it's really important that we disconnect. As technology follows us around, it's really easy I haul my phone everywhere, all over our office. It's always in my pocket. For our anniversary, my husband bought me an Apple Watch. And if you asked him what his favorite feature of this was, it would be that he knows now that without a shadow of a doubt, I'm getting his text messages. So even if I don't respond back, he knows that I saw his message that I needed to leave work now, or that he was leaving work now, or what did he need from the store? And if I didn't answer, that meant I didn't need anything. But we are so highly connected that my watch, you know, I'll be in meetings and it'll buzz for this, that, or the other. And it is important to totally step away from all that, spend quality time with our friends, our family, meditation, focusing on ourselves, and trying to disconnect as much as possible. Someone else says, I work in the lumber industry, and it is somewhat antiquated in terms of work-life balance. As a millennial, I value the utility of being able to work from home, a coffee shop, etc. However, it seems that many of the managers in the company do not value this approach. Any recommendations on how to bridge this divide within the industry? I don't know that you're going to be able to bridge the whole divide within the industry, but for you personally, again, I think it comes down to communicating what you want and need, particularly as it relates to you and your boss, and to sit down and say, I really value the ability to work from home or work from a coffee shop or just a different change of pace and scenery. And I'm committing to you that I am, you know, whatever is important in your organization, if it's a particular amount of time, if it's my outcomes are exactly where they need to be, can we work on this together? And I know it's not comfortable and it's not necessarily a traditional approach, but it would mean a lot to me. A lot of times we see the world through our own lens and perspective, and we don't realize that other people even think about it differently. So even acknowledging it can be really important. But to tell your boss, I consider this a perk of my job to be able to do these things, and if I'm producing and happy, don't you want that? And I think it's, I mean, you don't want to be threatening, right? You don't want to say, if I can't have this, then I'm going to have to look for something else that better meets my work-life balance. You don't want to take that approach, but you do want to make sure that you're communicating, this is meaningful to me. I find this valuable. A colleague and I were having this discussion the other day. A member of our leadership team sent out an email to everyone thanking her for her hard work. And she came to me and she said, it just meant so much to me. And I said, I was shocked because I recognize her and write her handwritten notes and bring her bottles of wine and like little gifts at least every other month, at least. And I was so surprised that that was the thing that mattered to her. And we sat down, we had a really good talk about it last week because my problem was I was doing for her the way I would want to be recognized, as opposed to recognizing her in the way that she wanted to be recognized. It wasn't bad intentions. I just didn't appreciate what mattered to her. But by her bringing that up, we were able to have a really productive conversation. And so my best suggestion would be just to sit down with your boss and say, I'd like to be able to do this. Could we make it work? And you may have to ease into it, right, to get your boss comfortable with it.
I finally figured it out.
Very traditional environment. But to say, you know, maybe we start by I work from home once a week or one morning a week. And there are certain roles where the work from home and some of that flexibility, especially if you're in leadership or management roles, or trying to assume one of those, and you're not available to other members of your team, that it can actually be counterproductive. And so it may not, I don't get to work from home very often as a function of a huge portion of my job is being available and removing obstacles for others throughout the day. But yeah, definitely try and ease into it, set your expectations, say this is what I'd like to achieve, and how can we work together to create a plan. And contributing, then why shouldn't you be able to have that flexibility? I actually had a colleague who used to work from home, and she's harder than everybody else in order to prove that she was working, because everybody just thought she was sitting around doing her laundry and watching television. So I think a lot of people who maybe don't appreciate some of that work-life balance have either known people or are the type of people who get distracted when they're at home and don't believe that you can work successfully from home, or they're just been in a very traditional environment and haven't broached it, haven't ever tried it, so they don't know if it's successful. And we have a tendency to stay with what's comfortable. Well, thank you all. This has been a great discussion. Not sure what happened to the audio there, but thank you for bearing with us. If you have any questions or any follow-ups, you're welcome to email me or Caroline. We'd be happy to answer those for you and follow up. And I guess happy Thanksgiving. And when we get back, we will be talking about conflict management on December 15th. So we'd love to talk to you guys about that. It's actually one of my very favorites to kind of go into a personality style and how to manage conflict and then how to work together. So knowing my conflict style and knowing your conflict style, how do we kind of bridge this gap in order to figure out how we resolve our conflict effectively? So it's definitely a very interesting conversation. So we'll look forward to that after Thanksgiving on December 15th.